It often began with a sigh. A woman quiet, composed, holding a teacup just a little too tightly. She would blink a few too many times, smile just a second too late, her gaze drifting somewhere no one else could follow. Her husband might notice first, or maybe a maid, or a priest. She had started walking alone too often, talking to herself, or simply ... not talking at all. She was nervous, they'd say. Too emotional. To a time before Plato, before Hippocrates, before Latin words were carved into the minds of future doctors, the dusty silence of a sun-baked courtyard. Priestess sits beside a trembling girl, barely old enough to be called a woman. Her breathing is shallow, her eyes dart from shadow to shadow. She has not slept in 3 nights. The elders say she's been visited by spirits. The priestess says otherwise. Failing that, he prescribes music played at the womb or even vaginal fumigation. The woman tries to speak to say that her chest aches in a way that music cannot heal. But she is told to lie down, to stop reading, to rest, so she does. She lies still, day after day, until stillness becomes her only comfort. We float forward now, through centuries of ink and silence, to a convent in northern France in the 11th century. A nun named Isabeau writes in the margins of her manuscript. She writes of a sister who could not stop crying, stared at the wall and whispered to the stone, who trembled when touched. The abbess believed it to be demonic possession. She was locked in the cellar for 7 days, fed only communion wafers and scripture. Isabeau writes, "I do not believe the devil makes her weep. I believe it is a sadness too heavy to carry." Her mother watches. One night she locks the medicine chest, throws the key in the fire, simply sits with her daughter, brushing her hair until dawn. The daughter sleeps deeply for the first time in months, and so we continue. Past asylums, past madhouses, past in spinning chairs, through Freud and his dreams, through vibrators prescribed not for pleasure but to relieve hysteria with no thought of desire, through chloral hydrate, through bromides, through forced institutionalization, to a quiet room in Vienna where a woman finally is allowed to speak without interruption. Her name is Anna. Oh, she speaks of fear, of pressure in her chest, of anxiety without cause. She is heard, and the field of psychoanalysis is born, but not without cost. Because for every Anna, there were thousands locked away, misdiagnosed. Here's one fact you might not know about me. I hate getting my ears pierced. Not because I think it hurts, but because I am convinced that when I go to get my earrings taken out, they're going to tell me I've ruined my hearing. And then my husband will have to listen to me constantly complaining about how he doesn't listen to me. And then he'll say, "You're overreacting." Then I'll cry. And then I won't be able to sleep. Then I'll wake up and start crying again. Welcome to anxiety. For anyone who's ever felt this way, you know how isolating it can be. You feel like no one else gets it. You feel misunderstood, alone. And maybe you're wondering, am I the only one? Am I broken? Is there something wrong with me? Today we're going to look at how far we've come in understanding anxiety. Because though it may feel like a uniquely personal burden, anxiety is actually a universal human experience. In fact, the earliest known record of anxiety dates back 4,000 years to ancient Egypt. They called it the heart's disease. A wandering wind that makes the heart beat fast and the limbs weak, a phrase that stuck around until the 19th century. Back then, physicians described anxiety as a neurosis, a weakness of character and nerve. And they treated it as such, with punishment, torture, and restraint. In the 1800s, the bed is white, laced, tucked, crisp with starch and expectation. The woman who lies there has not left it in 30 days. Curtains are always half drawn, the windows shut tight against even the faintest breeze. Her name is not famous, but her treatment is. They call it the rest cure. It's prescribed most often in the late 1800s. This method was designed by a physician named Silas Weir Mitchell, who believed the cure for female nervousness was utter stillness. No visitors, no reading, no writing, no walking, no thinking. Just lying, silent, obvious, passive. He believed the body must heal by forgetting that the mind existed at all. And so many women artists, mothers, thinkers, wives were confined to beds and stripped of their voices in the name of medicine. Their anxiety was treated like a rebellious child to be scolded into submission. One such woman was Charlotte Perkins Gilman. She endured the rest cure. It nearly destroyed her. But she survived, and she wrote. The Yellow Wallpaper. A story about a woman trapped in a room with floral wallpaper that seems to move when she stares at it too long. A room where she slowly loses her mind or perhaps finds it in the madness forced upon her. The story, published in 1892, was a quiet scream in literary form. A protest dressed as fiction, a way to make the world understand what it meant to be treated like a broken object rather than a person in pain. Doctors read it, many dismissed it. But women understood, and they whispered its truth to one another. Fast forward to the 1920s, women are experiencing a new kind of anxiety, a product of a changing world. Men had fought and died in droves during World War I, and those who came home were forever changed. But women, who had stepped up to fill the jobs left empty in their wake, found themselves facing a different kind of battle. For their place in society was not yet solidified. Now the century turns. It is the early 1900s. Factories rise. Wars bloom like bruises across the earth. Anxiety takes new forms, new names. For men, the battlefield carves fear into flesh and bone shell shock, they call it. But what of the women? They feel it too. It's mothers fearing the telegram at the door. Wives trying to rebuild families from grief. Daughters taught to smile while their stomachs twist with dread. There is no name for their trembling, no medals for their endurance, but they carry the weight anyway. Some are told their nerves are frayed. Others are sent to asylums for what doctors call female neurasthenia, a vague condition of weakness, overstimulation, and unworthiness. Often translated yet again as too much emotion. Treatments range from electrotherapy to hydrotherapy, ice baths, electric belts, even brief surgical interventions performed not to heal, but to quiet. And yet amid the cruelty there are glimmers of understanding. A nurse named Vera, working in a convalescent home after the First World War, notices a pattern. Women who are allowed to talk freely openly begin to show signs of improvement. So she breaks protocol. She sits, listens, offers no advice, just presence. And one by one, her patients begin to sleep again, to breathe easier, to speak their truths aloud. She writes nothing down, but the patients remember. Healing, it turns out, doesn't always require force. Sometimes it requires being heard. Now the 1940s, the world is at war again. This time, women are not just waiting at home, they're building planes, coding messages, tending to the wounded, managing rations, raising children and communities on their own. And still, they are expected to be composed, to smile, to carry on. But the pressure builds. Quietly, slowly, internally. Post-war, when the factory's empty and the men return, women are pushed back into the mold of domesticity. And when they feel crushed by it, trapped, suffocated, hopeless, they're told the same old lines: take a rest, have another child, try not to think too much. In the 1950s, a pill arrives, pale blue, marketed as the housewife's helper. Milltown, the first widely popular tranquilizer. It sells faster than any drug in history. Doctors call it a miracle. Advertisements show women floating happily through clouds of laundry and dishes, their anxiety dissolved into pharmaceutical fog. And when Milltown fades, Valium takes its place, mother's little helper. Millions of prescriptions are written, but almost none are accompanied by therapy or understanding or compassion. The message is simple: take the pill, don't ask questions. But some women do ask. They notice that the sadness returns when the pill wears off, that the dread never really goes away, that the medicine numbs but never mends, and some begin to write again. In kitchens, in notebooks hidden under mattresses, in diaries locked in desk drawers, they write about the emptiness, the anger, the desire for more. When one day in 1963, a book hits the shelves, The Feminine Mystique, written by Betty Friedan. She calls it the problem that has no name, this aching void inside millions of women who have been told that home is enough, that they should not feel restless or anxious or lost. And yet, Friedan's words are a thunderclap, a mirror, a rebellion. Suddenly women's anxiety is not just a private defect. It is a cultural symptom that changes everything. Therapists begin to reconsider. Studies expand. Language evolves. Anxiety begins to be seen not as a flaw, but as a message, signal, a response to unbearable expectations. The 1970s bring consciousness-raising groups, women sitting in circles, not in treatment, but in solidarity. They speak not of madness, but of being mad with reason, of not being broken, being ignored. And though progress is slow, it is steady. In 1980, the DSM, the Diagnostic and Statistical Manual of Mental Disorders, includes generalized anxiety disorder. At last, a name, and with it, a path. But names are not cures. Women still face stigma, still face dismissal, still hear echoes of hysteria dressed in modern clothes. You're overreacting. You just need a break. Have you tried yoga? Why are you so sensitive? And yet, there are therapists now who listen. Support groups where no one is judged. Books and podcasts and communities where women speak freely of racing hearts, trembling hands, spiraling thoughts. There are treatments tailored to women's lives, to their trauma, to their strength. There are names now: panic disorder, social anxiety, postpartum depression, OCD, PTSD. Names, yes, but also faces, stories, lived experiences. And women are no longer waiting in silence. They are speaking, writing, marching, healing. They are saying, I am not broken, I am alive, and I am still whole. Anxiety is not a sign of weakness. It's a sign that you're a human being navigating an imperfect world. It means you care, you feel deeply, you're paying attention. What it doesn't mean is that you're broken. This episode was produced by me and our team. Do you want to help us make more content like this? We have a Patreon, where the people who want to support the work we do chip in whatever they can. We've got some cool perks like blooper reels and early access to episodes. Head over to our page to check it out. The calendar flips. The 1990s arrive. The walls are whiter now, hospitals cleaner, the language more clinical, charts more precise. But beneath the surface, something familiar still whispers. Women still walk into doctors' offices with tight chests and tired eyes. Still leave with prescriptions and pamphlets and the lingering feeling that no one has truly listened. Anxiety has a name now, but does it have a voice? A woman in her 30s sits in a sterile room. The paper beneath her crackles as she shifts. She tells the doctor she wakes every morning with her jaw clenched, her thoughts racing before she even opens her eyes. The doctor nods. Panic disorder, he writes. Then he prescribes medication, tells her to take walks, avoid caffeine. She nods too. But when she leaves, the tension still hums in her ribs like a secret, because it's not just the panic, it's be everything. All at once, at all times. Worker, mother, daughter, lover, friend, caregiver, peacemaker, pillar, the face of serenity. In a world built on speed, by the early 2000s, something begins to stir. The internet, once a tangle of code and curiosity, becomes a confessional. A place where strangers tell the truth in whispers typed into blinking cursors. I can't breathe sometimes. My heart races when I hear a certain voice. I feel like I'm drowning in a room full of people. And someone replies, "Me too." Forums bloom, anonymous names with real pain. Women who have never been heard in person are finally heard in pixels. A girl in Indiana shares her spiral journal full of anxious thoughts. A woman in Karachi posts a midnight message about fear that arrives without warning. Mother in Oslo records herself crying in the car, then laughing, exhausted, minutes later. Slowly, the shame begins to peel away. Anxiety is no longer just something to hide behind a smile. It's something to name, to cradle, to understand. But this era brings contradictions. A boom in wellness, culture green juices, mindfulness apps, lavender teas, morning routines. Self-care becomes a brand. Instagram tells women to breathe, to stretch, to take bubble baths, to glow up and detox and manifest peace. But what if peace isn't pretty? What if healing isn't a mood board? What if anxiety is not solved by serums and scented candles, but by community, by compassion? By asking a woman not what she's done to fix herself, but what's happened to her. Because the world is still heavy, women still feel it first. They carry the weight of aging parents, sick children, broken systems. Societal expectations that say, be calm, but not passive, strong, but not loud, vulnerable, but not messy, productive, but not tired. It is a language of contradiction that wears thin over time, but something else is growing. Whispers become voices, voices become movements. Mental health becomes less a diagnosis, more a dialogue. More women become therapists, coaches, listeners. More memoirs are published, more podcasts launched, or honest conversations spoken across tables into earbuds across continents. A woman in Ghana records a video in her bedroom. This is what my anxiety looks like. It is viewed 10 million times. Another in Argentina sings a lullaby she wrote to calm her heart during panic attacks. It becomes a TikTok trend.
I date teenagers.
Teenagers in Canada start zine, circles printing handmade booklets full of anxious poems and handing them out in school bathrooms. The revolution is quiet, but it is real. Still not everyone understands. There are workplaces where women are told to toughen up, families who dismiss anxiety as weakness, religious leaders who mistake mental illness for spiritual failing. But the old narratives are cracking, because now a woman can walk into a room and say, I live with anxiety, and someone will answer, same. Not with pity, not with panic, but with recognition. Even the medical field, long frozen in the dogma of male-centered studies, begins to shift. Research catches up. Hormonal links to anxiety are finally studied seriously. The connection between trauma and long-term mental health is no longer ignored. Intersectional voices, women of color, queer women, neurodivergent, women are heard and not just heard. New treatments emerge. EMDR, trauma-informed therapy, culturally sensitive care, virtual counseling. Even chatbots begin to listen. But amidst all the innovation, the truth remains simple. The greatest medicine is still listening. It's not just hearing, but seeing. A woman walks into a room. She is shaking. She cannot explain why. Someone looks her in the eye and says, "You are safe here." And something inside her softens. Because safety is rare. Anxiety, its deepest root, is a fear that safety will vanish. So the healing begins, not in silence, not in pills, not in perfection, but in presence. And the story continues. A woman somewhere right now is crying in a stairwell, ashamed of her tears. Another is counting her breaths in a crowded subway. Another is watching the door again and again, just to be sure it's locked. Another is laughing in a meeting, even though her chest feels like it's full of bees. They are not weak. They are surviving. Their stories are not over. They are part of this long, unbroken thread, from Egyptian fumigations to digital therapy, from yellow wallpaper to TikTok confessions, from silenced voices to stories spoken freely. And if you're listening now, still awake, or almost dreaming, know this, your anxiety, is not your enemy. It is a signal, language your body speaks when the world forgets to be kind. And you are not alone. You are part of a lineage soft, strong, misunderstood, resilient of women who have felt too much and been told too little. Not anymore. Now you are heard. Somewhere in the quiet between thoughts, between sighs, between one heartbeat and the next, there is a space, a stillness. It is a place where all the women who came before you now gathered, draped, not in shame, but in memory. Story, you might imagine them standing at the edge of a great field, open hands, watching stars, the Egyptian girl with herbs pressed to her brow, the Greek woman who listened to her body and was told she was mad, the Roman wife who wrote prayers into the steam of her bathwater, the nun who wept for her sister in silence, the merchant's daughter, eyes bright with dreams and doubts alike, Charlotte scribbling on yellow wallpaper in the half-dark, the post-war mother counting pills in the kitchen after putting the children to bed, the teenager lighting candles she doesn't believe in, just for comfort. It's the modern woman with a therapist on speed dial and a voice that shakes but still speaks. They are all here, not to be pitied, not to be fixed, but to be honored. Because anxiety is not the sign of a fragile soul, it is the scar tissue of endurance. It is the echo of sensitivity in a world too often hardened. And it is also ... a map. A map back to softness, to safety, to knowing you are not broken. You are tuned, perhaps, to a frequency others cannot hear. A frequency that carries pain but also intuition, also empathy, also wisdom. Daunt. So tonight as you close your eyes, or, if they're already closed, let yourself drift on that frequency. Float back through time, not in fear, but in gentle companionship. Feel the presence of every woman who ever laid awake wondering if something was wrong with her, when in truth, she was simply feeling. Let the breath slow, let the shoulders loosen, let the story hold you. Because this history wasn't boring at all. It was buried. And you have helped unearth it. So sleep now, if you can. Or just rest. You are not alone. You are not weak. You are not too much. You are enough. Someone, somewhere perhaps in the future, will tell your story too. They will whisper. She felt everything. Still, she kept going. Somewhere right now, a little girl is hiding under her blanket. It's not from monsters, not exactly, but from a feeling she can't name. Her stomach flips when the door creaks. Her heart races when the phone rings. She feels strange and doesn't know why. She hasn't learned the word anxiety yet. She only knows that sometimes the world feels like too much. She'll grow older. Maybe she'll be told she's sensitive or dramatic. Maybe someone will laugh when she says her thoughts won't stop spinning. Maybe someone will tell her to get over it. Maybe, just maybe, someone will kneel down beside her and say, "It's okay." I feel like that too sometimes, and that small sentence will plant something inside her. Something steady. Something true, like a stone in a riverbed. Because that is all we've ever needed, really. Not grand cures, not impossible expectations. Just someone to say, "You're not alone in this," and slowly the girl will grow. She may carry her anxiety like a quiet passenger on the bus of her life. She may find tricks, counting her breaths, touching a necklace, stepping outside just for air. She may discover therapy, or journals, or music, or silence. She may learn her triggers. She may not. She may relapse. She may triumph. She may do both in the same week. But through it all, she will remember that one sentence, that one moment of grace, and one day she may kneel beside someone else, a daughter, a friend, a stranger, and she'll pass it on. It's okay. I felt that too. This is how healing travels. Not in straight lines, not in tidy boxes, but in circles like ripples across water. Each story you've heard tonight is a ripple. Each woman, a drop. And you, wherever you are part of that great lake now. Still, deep, real, even if no one ever told you. Even if you never wrote it down. Even if your anxiety never fit the definitions. Even if your heart races for no reason, your thoughts loop. Your fears multiply in the silence. You are not a mistake. You are human, and humans feel. Tremble, wonder, worry, especially the ones who love deeply. Especially the ones who notice everything, especially the ones like you. So here's what we'll do. Nothing dramatic, nothing forced, just breathe. Let the stories settle like dust in sunlight. Let your thoughts wander not as enemies but as guests. Invite them in, feed them tea, watch them leave. Let the quiet inside you speak not the anxious quiet, but the other kind. The sacred hush, the hush that says, you've made it this far, you are still here, you are still trying, and that, it's enough. Enough for tonight, enough for always. Less, dear listener. Float on this river of voices, this gentle history, this shared remembering. You are not alone. You were never alone. And if by chance you drift into sleep now, let it come like the closing of a book, pages soft, story finished, heart full. Tomorrow will wait. Tonight belongs to peace and to you. Sleep well. If you're still here, perhaps your eyes are closed. Perhaps not. Maybe you've drifted into that in-between place where the world blurs and everything is softer. Or maybe your thoughts are still circling. That's okay too. Some nights are like that. The truth is, healing doesn't always feel like healing. Sometimes it feels like failure, like stillness, like boredom, like nothing is happening. But something always is. Even now, as you lie still, your breath rising, your fingers resting, your heartbeat steady, your nervous system is learning that it is safe. That there is no need to flee or freeze or fight. That this moment holds no threat. Okay. Only story, only warmth, only quiet. Do you know that, once upon a time, it was believed that women's emotions could be measured in their breath? That an anxious woman's sigh was not a sign of weariness, but of imbalance. That the body was trying to reset itself. They weren't wrong entirely. Because sighing is one of the ways your body tells the mind, it's okay, I'm still here, still breathing. So if you sigh, let it be a good one. Let it rise from your belly, curl through your chest, and leave your lips without apology. A soft exhale of centuries. Of grandmothers who were never allowed to speak of their pain. Of mothers who hid their fear behind closed doors. Of daughters who learned silently how to carry it all. And of you, still here, still trying, still listening. It's beautiful. You know this act of listening. Not just to others, but to yourself. But it is revolutionary. Because for so long, women were taught not to listen. Not to their hearts, or their fears, or the flutter in their chests that whispered something was wrong. They were taught to dismiss it, to distrust themselves, to defer, but not anymore. Now, the world is changing. Gently, slowly, not loud but sure. Therapists are learning to ask better questions. Doctors are learning to pause before they prescribe. Friends are learning to sit in silence without trying to fix everything. Women are learning to name what they feel without shame. They're saying, I'm anxious without apologizing. They're saying, I need space without guilt. They're saying, this is too much right now, and allowing themselves to rest. They're saying no. They're saying yes. They're saying, I don't know, but I'm here. And you're part of that now. Even if you don't speak it aloud, even if you're just breathing, even if you're just here. Somewhere out there, someone else is listening to this same voice, hearing these same words, needing the same softness. You don't know her name, but maybe she feels familiar. Maybe you're both sighing at the same moment, both letting go of something. Isn't that something? To be connected not by blood or belief or proximity, but by emotion, by history, by this invisible thread of shared humanness. That too is healing. So if your thoughts are still swirling, that's okay. Just let them swirl gently, like leaves on a stream. Let them pass without judgment. This is not a race. There is nowhere to arrive. Just this moment. Just this piece. Just this story. We've come so far tonight. From ancient fumigations to modern therapy, from hysteria to healing, from silence to voice. And now we rest. Not because the journey is over, but because rest is part of the journey. It always was. So if you'd like, let the final thoughts drift like mist on a sleeping lake. Let the story fade. Let the silence speak now, because you are safe, you're whole, you're loved. And tomorrow, it can wait.